Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, How Strategic Partnerships Can Improve Arts Programs for the Military, presented by the Creative Forces National Resource Center. My name is Hannah Jacobson Blumenfeld, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager for Creative Forces. I'll be facilitating and moderating the webinar today, and I'll just start with some brief background on Creative Forces before we jump in with our panelists. Creative Forces NEA Military Healing Arts Network is an initiative of the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with the U.S. Departments of Defense and Veterans Affairs that seeks to improve the health, well-being, and quality of life for military and veteran populations exposed to trauma, as well as their families and caregivers. Creative Forces is managed in partnership with Americans for the Arts, Civic Arts, the Henry M. Jackson Foundation for the Advancement of Military Medicine, and Mid-America Arts Alliance. We are composed of three separate pillars: the clinical, the community, and the capacity. And today we want to talk a bit more about the community pillar. Our community connections projects, or as you'll probably hear us all refer to them several times throughout today's webinar as CCPs, began in 2018 as really the base of the community engagement pillar of our Creative Forces initiative. They were all over the country in locations near our clinical sites. The projects were varied and diverse, but all really helped us draw towards insights, lessons learned, and outcomes for organizations providing arts engagement activities for military-connected participants that also then went on to inform our national grant program. So today I wanted to start just by pulling out a few specific insights and outcomes that our panelists, who span across CCPs and grantees, will be addressing today. Some of these key insights include the fact that partnerships are critical and worth the investment. While I think many of us on here know that effective partnerships take time to develop, project leaders and partners all reported that they would not have been able to implement program activities and serve the target population without these partnerships. Participants also placed high value on programs that invested in understanding military culture and establishing key partnerships with organizations with a strong military background or network, and also critically incorporating a military-connected person into the program planning process from the beginning has proven to be a really effective way to ensure deeper engagement with military and veteran communities that we're trying to support. Program leaders, teaching artists, and other staff need to understand military culture in order to really serve the target population and to interface with military entities. And ensuring that military-connected voices are at the table from the beginning is really important. Partnerships, again, helped CCPs understand military culture, and they felt better equipped to work with that community in the future. This understanding was a result of training and capacity building that occurred across partnerships by developing relationships with military-connected individuals and by working with local veteran service organizations. Community arts engagement activities for military-connected populations do really benefit from participant input at all stages of programming. This will also enhance cultural understanding and communicate respect for this population that we're working with. Some key partners, which I know we'll hear about some more from our great panelists in a few moments, but a few of the key partners included military service organizations, clinics, and state or local arts agencies, and we'll hear about some more. Then these led to the grant outcomes, and I'll just list a few of these. You can find more about these on our website, creativeforcesnrc.arts.gov/community engagement, and I'm sure that link will go in the chat. But a few outcomes to keep in mind as you're listening today. Networked organizations. Grantees build networks and partnerships that support the design, implementation, and evaluation of programs for participants, leading to stronger outcomes for participants. Strengthened capacity. Grantees build their capacity to design, implement, and evaluate programs that meet the need of participants. And increased value of the arts. Grantee partnerships and activities lead to increased understanding of the value and impact of the arts across local participating networks and communities. So with those in mind, I want to throw out some learning objectives for you for today to keep in mind as you're listening. First, how to identify the right partner to most effectively serve your community. And secondly, how to bridge cultural divides, both in terms of military culture and language, and in terms of diverse community needs. So with those in mind, please feel free to put your questions as they come up in the chat. We will have someone moderating throughout, and we'll have about 10 minutes at the end to address those questions. So feel free to throw those in, and we will make sure to get to them. And our overarching question of today is, how can we ensure that the arts programming we offer is most effectively responding to the military community? And how can the partnerships we build internally and externally help to provide insight and guidance to better serve the health and well-being of the military-connected population we seek to serve? To help us address this rather big topic, we will be hearing from some fantastic representatives of two organizations as well as partners in their programming. So let's bring them on screen to start this conversation. We have Katie Harroff, the Interim Director of Arts Engagement at the Old Globe in San Diego, California. She's worked with the Old Globe since 2011, when she first originated the Community Voices Playwriting Workshop. In 2016, she rejoined the Globe and the newly formed Arts Engagement Department and began managing the Community Voices program as it expanded to new genres of performance development. Harroff is a playwright, director, and performing artist outside of the Globe and has been developing original documentarian performance experiences for over 2 decades. Katie, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
Hi. Next, we have Gill Sotu, a program associate and teaching artist with the Old Globe, and he is a veteran poet, playwright, DJ, and performing artist. He's a 2-time Grand Slam poetry champion, 2-time Raw Performing Artist of the Year, and a 5-time TEDx San Diego presenter. Currently, he's a teaching artist and a commissioned playwright with the Old Globe Theater, a teaching artist with the La Jolla Playhouse, and the poet in residence for the San Diego Writers Fest. He's been commissioned to produce original pieces for leading arts and community organizations across the country. Thank you so much for being here today, Gill.
I'm excited to be here again.
Great to see you. And we've got Charlie Lockwood. Charlie has a decade of experience as a nonprofit arts administrator and public folklorist. A native Texan, he holds an MA in ethnomusicology from UC Santa Barbara, where he played the oud with the UCSB Middle East Ensemble and did research with the Mardi Gras Indians of New Orleans. As the executive director of Texas Folklife, Lockwood has overseen a variety of flagship public programs and initiatives, including an archival preservation project to organize, digitize, and ultimately disseminate the organization's rich archival holdings dating from 1984. Charlie, great to see you.
Really honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And lastly, we have Francisco Sakate. Sakate is president of the COFA Alliance National Network Texas. COFA Alliance National Network Texas, C.A.N.T, is a nonprofit organization that unites Texans from the Republic of Palau, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and the Federated States of Micronesia. They amplify their voices through civic engagement in the fight for economic and social justice, preserve their cultural traditions for future generations, and educate the public about their past and present. Sakate, thank you so much for joining today.
I'm humbled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to start with a conversation with Katie and Gill. I want to really talk about finding the right partner, what that looks like, and how we can really amplify these efforts to create strategic partnerships, both internally and externally. So Katie, Gill, before we kick things off, it would be really helpful to get a sense of the size and the scope of the Old Globe and the project you're working on to put your partnership work in perspective. So if you can start with, how large is the Old Globe team? How do you work with the military-connected population? And give us just a little bit about the Creative Forces project that you are working on.
You got it. I will get that started. So it's important to note that the Old Globe is a large performing arts institution in San Diego in the middle of beautiful Balboa Park. And we annually put on about 13 to 14 big productions on our stages, and the Globe itself has a multi-million-dollar budget. It's a pretty large institution. My department is like a little nonprofit living inside of the old Globe, and it is the arts engagement department, and we have our own budget that works specifically in connecting to our San Diego community and helping to make theater matter to more people. We have about we have almost 50 partners across San Diego. And what I mean by partners is institutions that create social services for the greater San Diego community. And we, as a department, decided to partner with these institutions to bring this programming, bring different offerings that could basically connect their community to us and to provide them with the benefits of art, creativity, and expression. Veterans Village, which is the group that we are working with through this Creative Forces opportunity, has been a part of the Arts Engagement Department's partnerships since 2012, when we first brought our first Globe for All production to them. So Veterans Village is our partnered organization. They work to support about 3,000 veterans annually. They help them reclaim their lives from addiction and homelessness and other mental health needed support, to basically get them back into employment and in our society. And the Globe started that partnership in 2012, and we just have revisited them and continued to bring new and more exciting programming to them every year, basically because they ask us for it. They ask for specific programming from us, as does all of our community partners, and we shape our programs to suit their needs. Yeah, so I think I covered a couple of things in that response, hopefully all of it.
I think it's a really interesting point that you bring up, that the relationship that you have and the relationship that you've built is such that they're sharing their needs with you, and then you're going back to them with programming, and that's a real give and take there. And I want to actually take that as a really nice transition over to you, Gill, to ask if you can talk a little bit about your relationship, how you got involved with the Old Globe, and how the experience of partnering with the Old Globe has provided maybe some perspective or additional capacity or a different way of engaging artistically for you. And then we'll get back a little bit to the Veterans Voices, Veterans Village, as we go here.
Yeah. The funny thing is that I started out as one of those community partners, so the Old Globe reached out to me, Katie in particular, because I was running an open mic. I was just out of the Navy and was running an open mic, and I had a lot of really creative people. And the Globe asked if I wanted to help host a playwriting workshop taught by Katie. And that was like ages ago. When were the dinosaurs out? I don't know. It was like maybe like 7 years ago, I would say, and somewhere around there. And then ever since then, I just kept finding opportunities to work with the Globe, work with Katie, until fast forward to today. I'm teaching the classes now, and I'm a commissioned playwright with the Globe. And so what I'm really proud of is, like, we take not only these partnerships seriously, but we try to help people go to that next step, where it's not just like we're not just teaching a class and then leaving. We're seeing how much they're interested in moving forward, and what we can do to put them on our stage. Like one of the things that I help produce is an event called Access, where we bring the community to the Old Globe and put them on our big outdoor plaza and have a free show so people can see. So we work with our community partners where they're at, but then we also bring them to the Globe. So yeah, it's a great partnership, and it what's cool about it for me personally is that not only do I get to help like on a production wise or teaching wise, but then I'm also creatively doing work still to this day for the Globe.
That's great to hear that. And I think one of the questions that I have for both of you, and I think you've addressed this a bit, but how these kinds of partnerships have an impact on your programming. And I'm really hearing a lot about how programming is responsive. And Gill, for you coming in as a partner and then becoming a part of the programming process, are there any times that you can think of where that really had a major impact on the direction of programming, or you shared something that you felt was a really new direction? And that question can go to either of you.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Katie, I'll answer my section first. So, in a lot of the places where we have people, well, it's different situations, but like for Veterans Village in particular, I can think of three places. Veterans Village, there's a 4th District Senior Resource Center where it's all senior citizens. And then the our San Diego, it's like our homeless shelter in San Diego. In all those places, we come in with, like the structure of writing plays, but we also really listen to what they need. Some don't have the capacity to sit there and write even like a whole 10-minute play. So we'll work with them with just monologues, or work with them. I've done where we've had to pivot and work on like just poetry or songs or something like very short. And then we put it all together in like a full show. So we really are encouraged to listen to what the community needs and then respond, and it affects the work. But the goal is at the end for them for them to finish something and feel proud of, hey, I put this together. And then we bring in actors, professional actors in all of these programs to act it out, so they could see their work in front of their friends, families, or whoever they can invite. And I think that that's a really special thing. But it definitely, how the community responds to our programming affects how we do the programming, because we don't want to just say, this is what you have to do. We want to listen and then, but still teach. And so they feel like they learned something, or that they're able to do that skill at the end of it.
Yeah, that's great. Katie, I'll pass that over to you.
Yeah, I think I'll speak a little bit to bringing in that we have a couple of teaching artists on our list now that have come through our programs. And we certainly really, that has been a goal with us for a while, to create space for people who just are really excited about the work that we're doing with them. There have been people that just keep coming back and making themselves available for things. Gill is a really great version of that. Gill is just the best case scenario for us, just a really fantastic participant who also is an incredibly skilled artist, who we just knew if we were able to bring him on as a teaching artist with our institution, he would be able to relate and share best practices with us in working with this community. And we have a couple of teaching artists who represent, formerly incarcerated folks that came through our community services groups that work with predominantly Spanish-speaking groups, that have taught us so much in just working with them in workshop or working with them in different offerings and settings and discussions that we've hosted, that have shown us that if we can make space for these folks on our team as a teaching artist, this can help accelerate our connection to these communities, because they're going to see themselves in the artists that we bring to them on the regular, and feel like we're listening to who they are, what they need, and making sure that they feel seen in those spaces.
Yeah, that's really important. And I'm curious if you can share a little bit about the challenges of finding the right partner for your programs and how you mitigate those. Because I think a lot of people might hear, yes, I would love to do this, but what are some of those challenges you've faced? How can you mitigate those? And how can you tell when you have the right partner where it's going to lead to something like this? What are some of the things that you look for?
This is a great question. We're in the middle of an interesting situation with VVSD in particular, so I'll talk a little bit about that. But I think that we really can make best connections with partnerships with folks that have at least one or two people in the center of their institution that has some kind of understanding of the benefit of the work that we're bringing to them. And that's just not the case in every location, you know, and there's certainly groups that we've wanted to work with that we as the Old Globe or the Arts Engagement Department have seen, you know, we don't have a lot of programming with this population or this group. And if we don't have a connection there with with somebody on their team, their administrative staff that can help hold the door open for us, it can be kind of a hard sell for groups that are on the outside of our work. And VVSD is a really specific situation that that element is coming up for, because we had this amazing contact there who just really loved everything about the work that we were doing, fought for the work that we were doing to be there, saw the impact on the participants, and she retired last year. So it's been a bit of us trying to reconnect with VVSD, and there's been some challenges there, but this particular moment is a very self-motivated moment from arts engagement, because we've had the time in that institution and we know the impact of that work, and we have finally found a new contact there that is really very, very excited about us being there, and
even
she's
brings
doing
us snacks.
She brings us snacks. I know that sounds like a silly thing, but it really is the element that we find that we just need someone to hold open the door for us, and that person can act as an advocate within the rest of the institution to make sure that the work can move forward, the connection to the community can move forward. And right before this grant appeared, we were kind of in a place with them where we were like, we're not sure how this is going to go this year. We're going to continue to reach out and make sure that they know we're here and we want to work with them. But it was a little stop and start there, especially over the pandemic. But now I would say we're back, and we are rebuilding our connection specifically with the community, but we have a partnership there that is a lot more solid than it has been. And that's part of this work, is making sure that you have that contact and that connection, you continue to connect with them, and if you can, make other connections there in case you lose your best contact. and don't give up, because eventually someone's going to answer the phone, eventually someone's going to get the right information about past opportunities that happened there, and make this possible again.
Can I add something too? Yes to what all what Katie says, but I want to add to it is that finding that right partner it also speaks to the enthusiasm to which they speak about the program to potential participants. Because if you have someone that's kind of ho-hum about it, then, you know, your participation is going to be low. Also, you know, really trying to make friends. Like, I make it a point to try to make friends with the people that are actually speaking to the participants day to day. So the people who check them in, the people who, you know, open the door for us, you know, so that they know what's going on. Like, because if the participants, depending on where you're at, ask them, do you know anything about this playwriting? I don't know, you know, but like if you're friendly with them and they understand where you're coming from, and the benefit, like to what Katie said, to the benefit, then it really helps you move forward and have a robust program. So yeah, we're starting. I was there for like 5 years at VVSD, and I remember we had like full classes. Then when this woman retired, then it kind of dropped off. And now we're rebuilding. We have an excellent partner now. So I'm in the classroom. I was just there last night, and I'm excited at what they're going to be creating.
That's great. And, I love that you brought up something like they bring us snacks. And I think that you're absolutely right. It's not small because that's the human connection. And that's the whole point here, is that these connections are about people making connections with people. And I think that's a really important aspect of all of this. And I have so many more questions that I want to ask you, but I'm going to put them in my pocket for now. I'd love to hop over to talk to Charlie and Sakate. Thank you so much, Katie and Gill. You give us so much to think about and chew on, and we will come back to you in a little bit as we bring everyone on. But Charlie, Sakate, I want to start with the same first question to you. If you can share the size of Texas Folklife and how you've worked with military-connected populations, as well as giving a bit of background on your Creative Forces project, especially because, Charlie, you were a CCP, whereas the Old Globe is a grantee. So giving us a little bit of insight into that would be fantastic.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Really great to be here again. So Texas Folklife, we're a relatively small nonprofit organization. We've got about 8 staff members. We're mostly located in the Austin, Texas area, but we also do work around the state of Texas. The organization essentially functions as the state Folklife program for Texas. And what does that mean? It means that we partner with many different communities and artists, traditional artists, tradition bearers, cultural heritage bearers, to support and celebrate and present folk and traditional arts and cultural heritage from across the state. So there are many different communities that we've worked with, many different programs we've done over the years. And we got involved with the NEA Creative Forces Project in 2018, 2019, when we attended one of the summits that was held at Fort Hood in Texas. And there was a speaker there talking about, if you want to do work with military veterans, you need to understand military culture. And I thought to myself, this would be a perfect fit for us, because one of the things we really like to do in our work is understand cultural perspectives, understand how we can celebrate those, give them a platform. And I became really curious about what role folklorists and an organization like ours would have to play in doing arts and military veterans work. So we put together a series of storytelling and audio production workshops, podcasting workshops about things like military folklore, the ways of knowing and being as part of the military experience, as part of the veteran experience. We had veterans, active duty folks, and family members of veterans participate in several workshops. We did some in the Fort Hood, Killeen, and Temple area. We did some in the Austin area. We've done some in North Texas. We've done oral history training workshops through the American Folklife Center, the Library of Congress's initiative. They have a veterans oral history program. We've done several different things. Also a female veterans songwriting workshop, expressing their experiences and whatever they were willing to share through song and through story. And so we've done a lot of work over the years since getting involved. And one special connection that we were able to establish was through a participant in one of our other initiatives, who is part of the Compact of Free Associations. He's from the Federated States of Micronesia, and he was sort of the sole tradition bearer of this stick dancing tradition from his island of Pingalap in the Federated States of Micronesia. And so working with him and understanding some of his perspectives about preserving his cultural heritage while also tying it into serving his community across Texas and the Micronesian community and the COFA community that exists across the state became sort of a priority for us. This person is also a retired combat medic that served in the U.S. military. And so we began to understand the connection between folks that have served in the U.S. military and their background in as part of the Compact of Free Associations, and Micronesia, Marshall Islands, Pulau, etc. And so that led us to working with the COFA community and Sakate with us. And I don't know if we still have time to show the video that we talked about. If that is a possibility, I'd love to kind of just share a quick clip of that to see if we can just get a quick background on what we're talking about, the people that are involved, and some visuals from the beginnings of this project.
This is the song for the first part of the chant, first chant. Leo Toki Pasok, Colombia, Venezuela, Hola niti, Paranisi, Perisi, Simke, Antadi Vascolia, Silimpo, Libya, Peru, Anapas Baracoa, Magdalena Erco, Erco Liankara, Ukala, Makala, Takasin, Cinco, Takasi, Sopransko Urki, Liokororo To Kamar Mway. My name is Sepri Yakana. I'm from a small island in the middle of Western Pacific Ocean called Pingalat. Pingalat is part of a bigger state called Pohnpei in the country of the Federated States of Micronesia. I started learning Pingalabese stick dance at the early age of like 9 years old. In fact, when the first Peace Corps volunteers came to the islands, that's when I was young, and I saw the older boys learn the dance and perform before as a welcoming event for the Peace Corps volunteers. So tried to learn it, and then when I went to high school, there's an annual show. It's called Variety Show, where different groups of students from different villages or islands, they get together and they just compete for the show. But the Pinglabese warrior stick dance almost came out number one most of the time. Pinglabese warrior stick dance is originally, way back then when the islands were not introduced to the Western world yet. What they told us is that they were used to practice to develop their fighting skills. In 1986, the Micronesian Islands became the Compact of Free Association relationship with the United States. But prior to that, after the Second World War, Micronesia was trust territories of the Pacific Islands, which the United States government is the governing identity over these islands after the Second World War. After the Federated States of Micronesia came into effect, the citizens of, they call it FSM, Federated States of Micronesia, can come to the United States and go to school without the visa requirement. They just need their passport. So, for example, myself, I joined the military and we were in Germany 2 times and all over in the United States, Oklahoma. And as I go from post to post, I see they have cultural days, like May is Asian Pacific Islander. And I go attend some of the festivities and events, and I see a lot of the groups, they perform their traditional dances, and I feel like I need to teach my kids to learn this so that they can identify, if somebody asks, where are you from originally, and they say Micronesia, and if they ask them about Micronesia, there's nothing they can associate with. We've gone back a couple of times in the islands, but as far as traditions is concerned or culture, these things could be lost.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Charlie.
Sure, yeah, and I think just to kind of wrap that and transition forward here, when we found out that Sepper Yakana was so passionate about this cultural heritage stick dancing, we at the same time were learning about his efforts to build a community-based organization in Texas and what some of their needs were. And so with this project that we developed, we were trying to connect that cultural heritage piece to the very real needs that the community had. And we were at that point able to connect with Francisco Sakate, who we're lucky to be joined by today. So that's kind of a little primer on the initiative that we developed together.
Thanks, Charlie. And that is a great transition. Sakate, I'd love to hear from you. What is the benefit for you and for your group of this connection with Texas Folklife? Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yes. So, this particular group of islands, they're sovereign nations in the Western Pacific. They have this unique agreement with the United States. It's called the Compact of Free Association. No other nations on earth has that relationship or agreement with the U.S., which basically gives the United States exclusive defense right over an area as big as the U.S. itself in the Western Pacific. That is an indefinite exclusive right in the agreement that was signed by Reagan in 1986. In that agreement, basically, it's a defense agreement that has been a strategic, powerful tools for the U.S. to use in its foreign policy since then. In return for our nations and our people, we could come to the U.S., we could study, we could work, and we could also join the service. And being volunteers, joining the Army or the military, and that's where the connection comes in with Texas and COFA Alliance National Network, Texas, because a lot of our folks here in Texas came to Texas, especially Central Texas, because of Fort Hood. A lot of them have been in the service since the very late 80s, so they're now retired. They've got kids that are now service members. They got families up here, a lot of veterans here in Texas. And not all of them have the same access to services. Some of them have gone back to the islands, and Folklife give us that opportunity to tell the story of our people. Because while our agreement with the U.S. gives us those rights to come and go and work and live and do as much as a normal U.S. citizens, there are still policies and gaps that a lot of people are not aware of. Like the agreement offers a lot of social services and a lot of social networks, safety nets for our people initially. But in the process of U.S. Congress changing laws and introducing new bills, our people fell in the cracks, and we had to basically fought for 20 years to get Medicaid reinstated back for our people, including service members. The only thing that you have to do when you join the service is become a U.S. citizen, and that basically it forces, the citizen of our islands to come to the U.S. and immediately change citizenship in order to have advancement while in the service. So while a lot of guys are U.S. citizens, they still have a lot of family members, immediate family members. We're big on extended family, the culture. They bring their moms, their dads, their nieces up here with them. They bring the whole family up here, but not everybody's covered under those benefits. You're an active duty, your wife or your spouse, that's it, and your kids. So with Texas Folklife, it gives us, a resource, a tool for us to kind of show and share the stories that, yes, we have the service members here, but their families are hurting, they're suffering. Yes, we have these veterans that are here, but they have to be able to get access when they go back to the islands, because the closest service centers in Hawaii. Even in Guam, they don't really have the availability of services for veterans that are here in the States. So if you get sick, you gotta fly all the way back to the States in order to get any services done for you. If you're lucky enough to have any money to afford the flights to come back out here. So yeah, I'm very grateful. I'm thankful with the partnership that we have with Folklife, and we look forward to working more to emphasize more to, I guess, get the awareness out there that this particular group of Pacific Islanders that give up so much of our islands in defense of the U.S., that carries so much value as far as the foreign policy for the United States, not just in the Pacific, but globally, we're suffering. And a lot of that, what was agreed in 1986 in that initial compact of free association, unless you fight for it, nobody's gonna care. So that's why we continue to voice it until these days.
Thanks so much for sharing that history and that story. And I think that you brought up this aspect of storytelling is really critical. And that's something, Charlie, that I know has been a part of the Texas Folklife programming through each of the iterations of the programming that you've done with military connected populations. So I want to ask just one more quick question and then bring everyone back in for a bit more conversation. But Charlie, if you can share, in what ways does this partnership help to shape the way you talk about the work? And has anything changed in the way that you create programming because of what you've learned through this partnership? And I think, just from what you've shared today, Sakate, and I'm sure there's so much more here, there's much to learn and much to help shape. So Charlie, I'd love to hear about that briefly before we bring everyone back in.
Sure. And we have some flyers that from the programs, if you want to show those now while I'm answering this question. I think this project, which was sort of a telearts project that we were lucky also to receive some Creative Forces support from, we really, again, tried to connect the lessons about cultural heritage and the real needs of the community. And as Sakate said, I think he put it brilliantly, just trying to help the community to tell their story in a way that is compelling, that people can understand through arts, through dance, coupled with the very real sort of approaches to getting services that the community needs. So I think doing this project, just sort of echoing what Katie and Gill have already shared, the way we've been thinking about this work, especially with this project, has been to really understand what those community needs are. Sometimes organizations, we get passionate or excited about the tools we have and how we can share them. And we've got ideas, but you really have to meet the community where they are and listen to what those needs and requests are, because there may be competing needs. There may be something completely different than what you had in mind coming into the project. And so we were educated very quickly, working with Sakate and working with the COFA network here in Texas, about what those tangible community needs were, whether they were public health, availability of information, of services, trying to get Medicaid for veterans and other members of the COFA community. So just being much more attuned to what those needs are, and then helping to shape a program based on those with some leadership in the community. So that's kind of how this project came together. I think that has, definitely impacted how we approach doing collaborations, how we approach doing programs going forward.
That's great, Charlie. That is a perfect segue into bringing everyone back on. I have lots of questions for all of you, and please do, for anyone watching right now, feel free to throw some questions in the chat, and otherwise you'll just leave it to me. I have plenty. So Katie and Gill, I'd love to start with you. Can you share how you're able to build trust across sectors, across cultures, with military partners? Love to hear a little bit more about how you build those partnerships and build that trust.
I think a lot of it boils down to our initial connection to these folks and the way that our department approaches partnership as a whole. the Globe a is a 501c3. They need a specific amount of ticket income to stay afloat. But our programs are free and inspired by the community and for the community. And so when we started initial connection with this group, we invite them and their participants to share feedback with us about what they would like. We also invited them to share critical feedback with the Globe as a whole, and we were receptive to that feedback and made changes inspired by that feedback. And then just in the classroom and with the workshops that we develop, we really emphasize that the work that evolves through the time that we partner with them, it belongs to them. We're not looking to create any kind of monetary program inspired by their writings or what they developed. In the ultimate end of the program, they walk out of there with whatever they created and the full control over whatever would happen with it after that. We work very hard to not create exploitive environments, and we make sure that our participants know that from the get-go, that at any point when they work with us, they can opt out, they can say no, they can remove themselves from a situation, and we do everything that we can to bring them back and make sure that they know that it's a safe environment. But that's the way we work.
That's great. And Gill, anything you want to add to that? And especially from your perspective, what an organization might be able to do to help provide a space that feels safe and welcoming for a teaching artist who is a veteran to come in and add your voice?
Yes. Really just being able, like when we go into the classroom, I just make sure that I share my story of where I came from, because it's important to know that, I didn't spend hundreds of thousands in years and years in theater school to learn what I know. I came from the ground up, like many of them. So I'm proud to kind of be that poster child of like, okay, if you put in the work and you really want it, then you can move up and in your art and really create. And honestly, when I first got into the community voices as a participant, I was working a regular 9-to-5 job, and now I do art full time with through the Globe and other things on my own. But it's programs like this that gave me the confidence to be able to really put my work out there. And then I started getting commissions from other organizations, because of the work I started with at the Globe. So it's important for them to know things like that, to see what could be possible. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have a question from the audience, so we will flip over to that, and then we'll come back to some more questions from my end. So this is a question from Anna. When first building a partnership, how do you define the benefits of a partnership with your organization?
With the organization, with them, or for us as the Old Globe?
I think probably, how do you define the benefits to them of partnering with you?
Okay. I think Katie can speak to that first.
There's other people here.
Yeah.
But I think that we rely a lot on the data that we collect around our programming. And we have a lot of reputable, inspiring past participant work that we've done, and we do everything that we can to show the work. But a lot of it is about building that trust, taking a scaffolding approach to a partnership. With VVSD, we didn't immediately start with them by building a program and putting it there. We started by bringing a reading to that group that we thought, hey, you might like to hear this reading. It's a little bit around your own interests. And from that, we got to dig a little bit deeper with that group, because they were able to watch that play and say, hey, that was inspiring. Some of the people that watched it might be interested in digging deeper. And so for us, it's about trial and error, and never giving up. So you got to show your work, and a lot of times you can't immediately sway people to believing that what you're doing is not going to be exploitive. You have to take time and dedicate hours to that institution and show them that the outcome of your projects have a positive impact on this community. And you're there for the right reasons. You're there to specifically support that community and making the connection to art, not trying to get anything out of them. So it takes time.
That's great. And I want to ask Charlie, I saw a lot of head nodding, so I would love to hear what resonated with you about that, if you have anything to add.
All of it. Ditto to everything Katie and Gill said there. I think, when it comes down to it, like this is hard work. Building relationships takes a lot of time, takes a lot of trust, a lot of back and forth. It means maybe compromising on some of your preconceived ideas of what the benefits would be to your own work. And I think it comes back to conversations and building the trust. So when I think about defining benefits to the partners we're working with, I ask them, what does that look like for you? What does success look like? And I know with this project that Sakate and Texas Folklife organizations worked on together, there were some tangible outcomes that were important to them. So you can speak to that, Sakate, if you like. But I think, again, never give up. Totally echo that. This work requires a lot of back and forth, a lot of trial and error, a lot of experimentation. The data collection can really help surveying people, before they start working together, and then afterwards understanding where the changes and the impacts were. But it starts with conversations, and I think maybe a challenge there is this kind of work, it can be organic. It can take a long time to develop. And when you're working in sort of the framework of grants with timelines that have clear start and end dates, that can be difficult. So I think trying to learn how to operate within different kinds of timeframes and speeds, I think is a big challenge. That the more trust you have, the more conversations you have with your partners, the faster you can mobilize things. So communication, building trust.
Those are great key takeaways. And I think we have time for probably one more question. And we have a really beautiful one in the chat that I'm going to try to summarize. Lita says that often when the art sector is raised, it's perceived as a nice to have or just a hobby. However, the essential role that it plays as a transformative form of healing individually and across communities is really key. And this question asks, how do you frame this role of the arts in your messaging? How do you communicate your mission for those who don't necessarily already believe it, to better understand the concrete impact? And both of you, all of you really, have raised this idea of tangible impact. So what do you think? Any thoughts on how you message that and how you really build the case?
I think for me, just being a storyteller and teaching how to be a storyteller, one of the things I learned while actually in the military and traveling to all these different countries is that one of the most beneficial things for a human soul, a human spirit, is the ability to share your story, at least with one person. It helps you to feel like, and then when you hear other people's stories that are similar to yours, when you can connect with another story, it makes you feel like you're not so alone in your thinking, in your culture, in your ways, and then just to feel like you're being heard. I believe everybody want in some shape or form. Some people want to be heard by the world. Some people are just good with being heard by just a few people, but I think that we all have that need. And so it's a huge benefit to not keep all that inside. And sometimes, again, as a poet, as a storyteller, you can get out all the things that are inside of you through other characters. It doesn't have to be like this I, or you can get it out through song, and those things, being able to do that is a huge blessing.
That's really a beautiful way of putting it, Gill. Thank you. And Sakate, I'd love to ask if that resonates with you as you were talking about storytelling and this really tangible impact that this arts partnership has been for you all. So does that resonate with you, and anything that you want to add in this last minute or so?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're islanders, and we love to tell stories, and we live through storytelling from our ancestors. That's the way it kind of came down through the pipelines, through generations, and that's still true today. Our veterans, they have ways expressing their feelings or what they want to get across, and not everybody will do it the same way. Our islanders, especially our spouses, the ladies, they love to make food. So expressions also happen in that sort of art, and I think that's one thing that when we get together, the veterans get together, we invite not just our own island people, but we have so many different groups of veterans here in Texas, here in Central Texas, especially, that we learn just by getting together, having a small meal or a small dinner. We invited the disabled veterans group, or this one particular group. We just listen, and they one thing I noticed is that veterans resonate well with veterans. So when they tell the stories, we just gotta find a way for us to get that story out to the people that need to be heard. So Texas Folklife has afforded us that opportunity, and we're gonna continue to leverage that to make the voices heard out there.
That's great. What a great note to end on. And I want to just throw out some words that I heard each of you use today to see if we can get to some really key takeaways. I heard listening, I heard stories, I heard trust building. Any last really valuable insight words as we wrap up here? I feel like that covers it.
I wish I had something really inspiring just to end on a button for, but I think the thing that is popping around in my head right now is that if because this is all about partnership and making that work happen. I'm really into the book right now called The Obstacle is the Way. And I'm inspired by the approach of looking at our obstacles as opportunities, because if something isn't working, there's a reason why it's not working. It might not be the right time. It also might not be what these folks want. So take knowledge from the obstacles that you face and allow them to inform the work that you bring to your partners.
Katie, I think that was an incredibly inspiring button to end on. Thank you. And thank you all, Katie, Charlie, Gill, Sakate. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your thoughts, your experience with us today. I know I have lots more that I wish we could cover, and I hope that others will also take an opportunity to continue to connect with this topic, with this idea of partnerships. It's really rich terrain for us to continue to explore together. And with that, this webinar has been recorded. You can take a look and keep an eye out for it to go up. And please subscribe to our newsletter to get the latest Creative Forces updates, including our upcoming grant announcement on November 1st. The link to subscribe should be in the chat. And also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel to access the recording of this webinar and other webinars we posted. And with that, I wish you all a really lovely afternoon, a lovely fall ahead, and thank you you again to our amazing panelists for your time today and for the work that you do. Have a great day, everyone.
For more information, refer to the National Resource Center at creativeforcesnrc.arts.gov.